I bet you weren't expecting me to return to the CSS Kingsbury branch so soon, and neither was I, but everything on this branch line is unexpected, including the trip on February 13th. I was in Stillwell on this day, and knowing that there was a chance I would see the South Shore, I decided to bring my camcorder. Very glad I did, because just as we were approaching the crossing, the train started moving. I had absolutely no idea it was going to be here, and given the fact that I hadn't seen the South Shore for months prior to this, I was convinced that they completely changed the schedule and I would never see it again. Thankfully, I did. I got an awesome shot too, panning from the frozen snowy field over to the train. Sadly, 2007 was leading. Although this unit has the best horn on the whole South Shore roster, I've also seen it lead twice before, so I would have much rather 2009 lead, which was trailing second. Just as the head end passed, I realized that there was a Reading, Blue Mountain, and Northern grain hopper right behind the power. Not too often you see those this far away from home rails. The train began to slow down as it passed over this crossing, as they always do a roll-by inspection here. For some reason, this time they dropped this flare on the ground next to the train. They don't normally do this, maybe because it was dark, I'm not 100% sure. Soon enough, the engines began reversing back over the crossing, giving me another shot of them and a much better view of the 2009 trailing, which I don't see too often. And soon enough, it throttled up and left, with some additional horn blasts courtesy of the engineer. On February 20th, I knew the South Shore would be running, so I headed down into Stillwell to try and see it, and as I was driving into the town, I heard the sound of the train. I pulled off at my across the field shot, and when the train came into view, I was absolutely gobsmacked for two reasons. One, it was going into Stillwell instead of out of Stillwell, which is really weird because this is normally the time it runs out of Stillwell. And the consist. Not only were there 3 engines, which is rare, but leading was CSS 2004, the old South Shore Orange Scheme Heritage Unit, ? And trailing second was CSS 2010, the patched LNI unit. I really wanted to see this consist up close, And since it was going into Stillwell, that meant I couldn't chase it to the other crossings that are farther up the line. But it did mean I could go into Stillwell to see if I could find them parked at the yard. And so I found myself at CSS's Stillwell Yard and grain elevator. And it wasn't too long before we saw action. A cut of hoppers started moving, but as they got closer, we realized the South Shore Jeeps weren't pushing them. I thought maybe it was a trackmobile or some sort of small rail vehicle, but no, it was none other than a front loader, which had its bucket wedged in between the two cars and was pushing them into the siding. If that doesn't show just how rural and backwater this branch line is, I don't know what does. After moving those cars into the siding, the front loader went back into the yard and picked up more. Sadly, we didn't get to film any more front-loader powered switching because we heard the horn of a CN train coming. It sounded really weird and peculiar, so I wanted to see it. So we went to the CN tracks, and it was a Gevo. After that, we headed around to the other side of the yard to see if we could get any views of the Jeeps, and sadly, this crappy angle was the best one we could get, officially meaning that there was no way I was going to get better shots of this ridiculous trio of engines. I was disappointed, but there's only 13 engines that work this line, so I'll have a chance to see these two again someday. However, I wouldn't have to wait too long for my South Shore redemption. On March 2nd, we were driving into Stillwell once again in an attempt to see the South Shore Jeeps. And once we got there and arrived at the crossing, we saw the tail end of the train on the line and it was running away from us. We quickly jumped in the car and roared down Highway 4 towards the lake crossing. We got there with plenty of time to spare as the two Jeeps showed up, running Longhood forward, which is pretty cool. Sadly, the leader is CSS 2002, the worst unit on the roster, because instead of having an RS3K like every other unit, it got removed just recently and replaced with a disgusting K3LA. On any other railroad, this would be a cool horn, but on South Shore, this is despicable, disgusting, and disgraceful, and I hate it! Hopefully I never see this unit leading again. Ever. Either way, the shot was like literally perfect aside from that, because look at this, it's golden hour lighting at the lake crossing. It's beautiful. And so I'm going to shut up now so you can all hear the disgusting horn just as much as I had to. And that marks the end of another CSS Kingsbury branch rail fanning video. A lot shorter than the last one, but that last one was a compilation of way too many trips. That probably should have been 2 videos, but instead it was 1 because of weird circumstances. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to catch those units while you can, especially the ones that aren't 2002, and I will see you in the next video.